Welcome to the old man's corner. Grab a cup of coffee and come on in. Today I'm going to talk about an incident that happened several years ago. I had been working as a prison guard in Hutchinson, Kansas, and had just been there a short while, and then I decided that that wasn't what I really wanted to do. So I started looking around for another job and some other things to do. Well, I was talking to my brother, my younger brother David, and we got together and decided, well, we were both kind of unemployed, so we was going to take a trip and go wander the country while we had had time to do so. So we packed up his old car, and then my nephew Troy, he decided he wanted to go with us too. So we loaded up the car, we headed out, and just headed out across country. Didn't know where we was going. We just started driving up east, north and east, basically. We're driving. It was a leisurely drive and just talking, getting along. We drove several miles, and I think one of the stops we made was in Ohio, and it was getting closer to dark, so we decided we were going to stop for the night and rest. And we found this it was a park. It was like a state park. And we pulled in there and found us a picnic table. And as the night was wearing on, we noticed that there was a bunch of people down there, and they were talking and around their campfires and stuff like that. And it was a beautiful night, nice crisp air, and the sky was just so, I don't know, stars everywhere. But the people down below us there had their telescopes out and were looking at the stars and planets and things like that. And one of them came up there and decided to ask if we wanted to come down and look at some of the planets and stars. So we wandered down there and kind of looked at them with them and enjoyed checking them all out, and then went back up. And I know I laid on the top of the picnic table to sleep, and then I think the other two were in the car sleeping. And I remember it very well because it got a little chilly, and then woke up and I was kind of wet because the dew had hit. Well, we were going to take off from there, and evidently we had a radiator hose. I believe it was a radiator hose or power steering hose that had started leaking. So got under there and didn't have money to buy another hose or anything like that, so got some tape and clamps and things like that, and got it fixed up and filled back up and headed off again. We ended up in Buffalo, New York. Went to Niagara Falls and looked at it as we was up there, and that was kind of interesting. Never been there before. And from there, we decided we were going to go on up to Maine. So we wandered up there, wandered around for a while, just drove up the coastline there, got to Portland, Maine, and it was a nice little oceanfront town, except terrible smell. And it had a big old fishy smell. Didn't care much for that place, but we were going to try to decided, well, we'll see if we can find a place to live up here and maybe find jobs up here. Got to checking around and see what kind of rentals they had. And talked to this one lady. She said, yeah, she had a little studio apartment. It was $600. So we thought, well, between us three, we could probably swing that. Till we found out it was $600 a week. So that kind of blew all over. We decided if the studio apartment was $600 a week, we weren't going to be able to afford a house or anything like that. And probably wouldn't be able to stay there very long. Probably wasn't very many jobs or anything available either. So we moved on. We came on back down and down at Buffalo, and we crossed over into Canada. And back then, you didn't have to have a passport to do so. They just checked your IDs and let you drive on in. The one thing they ask you is, do you have any weapons, any guns? And of course we said no, but actually I had my briefcase there in case we needed to prove who we were and stuff like that. And I had my little Saturday night special in there, a little chrome plated 22. But they didn't check, and so I didn't mention anything about it. And we went up, and we just drove across the bottom of Canada. Didn't look much different than where we were from. Kansas is all kind of flat down on the southern part of Canada. Had to get used to the, instead of miles, the kilometers. I had to figure out what speed they were talking about. But we drove across there for quite a while and just looked at the different things, and then we decided, well, we're just going to head back in the United States. So we got to Detroit, and we're coming across a bridge coming into Detroit. And of course, there was this, we hadn't really bathed or anything, just cleaned up that much. And all those had kind of scraggly beards and such. And I was sitting in the back seat with a pile of stuff that I was carrying with my briefcase right on top of it. And I guess we looked kind of funny, so the border guards pulled our car over. So we had to pull over there, and they asked us to get out and escorted us into the building there. And we were sitting around in there, David and I and Troy, talking about it. And all of a sudden, this young man came in. I guess they were checking our vehicle. This young man came in, and in Spanish he says, "Una pistola." And so then I realized, yeah, they found my gun in there. And in Canada, you weren't supposed to have any handguns. So all of a sudden, look up, and we had guns drawn on us, pointing them right in our face, especially this one little guy. And he goes, "Don't move, you make me nervous." I said, "Hey, we make you nervous. You're kind of making us nervous, that gun pointing this way." Well, they separated us that time. They took Troy and David off one way, and I went off the other way. They put me in this room. I was sitting in there, and then this guy come walking in, and he said, "How you doing?" I said, "Okay." He said, he was with the FBI. So he sat down and he said, "I got a few questions for you. What were you doing in Canada?" I said, we just drove across the bottom there. We were out looking for jobs and stuff across the United States, and we just thought while we were up in this part, we'd come across Canada. And he goes, "You do know that in Canada, you're not allowed to have handguns, and we found your handgun in with a bunch of information and stuff in a briefcase." I said, "Yeah, well, I had my briefcase that had all my birth certificate and graduation stuff, high school graduation stuff, and things like that, so I could prove who I was and everything if we found a job." And he said, "Well, they also found a bunch of knives in the trunk and a rifle." Well, see, I didn't know about that. Troy had brought all of his knives, and there was a rifle back there also. I said, "Well, I didn't know about those, but we were just, all we're doing is looking for jobs and just running across the United States." And he goes, where were you at before you came up this way?" I said, "Well, I was working as a prison guard in Hutchinson, Kansas." And he said, "You aren't up here trying to get drugs and stuff and take them back down there to the prison, are you?" I said, "No, I don't even work there anymore." And he started laughing. He says, "Are you a member of any club?" And I thought, "What do you mean club?" I said, "Well, I'm a member of Kansas Office Club," and he just busted out laughing. He goes, "I meant like motorcycle club or something like that." I said, "No, we ain't no members of all that stuff. And I didn't know, but I guess in the other room, David and Troy were getting script searched. They didn't do that to me. So we sat there and talked for a while, and he goes, well, he says, I'm going to give your gun back to you. It's unloaded. We unloaded it. I said, well, that's fine. It was loaded in the briefcase. And he said, I'm going to give you all your information back and stuff. And we're going to release you guys. He said, but if I were you, I wouldn't stop till I got out of Detroit. I looked at him, I said, well, we're not stopping until we clear out of Michigan. And sure enough, we got out there and got it to the car, and they, it was all be-shoveled. We had to put everything back in it and rearrange it and all that stuff. Got in the car, and I told him, I said, David and Troy, I said, hey, let's go and let's don't stop until we have to, as long as it's outside of Michigan. Well, when we left there, we just kept on driving and ended up back home. But it was kind of a humorous incident, but it wasn't that humorous when you're standing there looking down the barrel of a gun. So if you had anything that kind of shocked you like that, or where you had dealings with the Border Patrol or even local law enforcement that kind of shook you up and then you became a little humorous later on, tell us about it. Drop it down in the comments, let us know. I'd love to hear these stories as well. If you want, like I said, you make a video and put it up and tell people about your life. So anyways, I just thought I'd drop this one. It's going to be a short one. And I appreciate you all watching these videos, and I thank you much. And I know I love you all, and we'll talk to you later.